Well, welcome back to another episode of Successfully Unsuccessful. I'm your host, Josh Dittrich, and today in the house here in St. Michael is Mr. Jordan Crockett. How are you, sir?
I'm doing well, brother. I'm doing well.
I love
for
it.
having me out here, man. Love the compound.
Yeah,
the spot.
It's a work in progress. The compound concept of having a couple of adjacent properties. I get teased a lot, but I also get high-fived a lot. My wife is more on the neither of those. You crazy.
Yeah.
But no, so glad you made it out here making the drive from technically Minneapolis. Where do you live?
Yeah, I'm Eagan right
now. Oh, you
Eagan
became a suburban boy?
A suburban boy, yep.
All right.
Yeah, had little, so I have JJ's too, and then Layla was born last year, June 20th. So my wife was like, yo, we need to find a comfortable spot.
Yeah,
like,
for sure. I get it.
Yeah.
And so she home with them?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, my wife actually works. So she's a diversity, equity, inclusion program manager at Capella University. Okay. So she works at home, and then we have a nanny come to the house.
Typically. Oh, cool. Good for you.
So
that's so good. I think all of us relate to the struggle and the dynamics of raising children, figuring out childcare / work / income / challenges, right? And it's work. That's what they call
wild, man. It's wild. I'm like, I don't know how, like, generations before this, like, you literally, like, childcare, they want an arm and a leg. Like, it's mad. And
right.
I think Minnesota is, like, the highest for childcare. So I'm like, single mother, I don't know how a single parent would do anything. Like, it's
right.
It's mind-boggling. So I give my hats off to people who, you know, have the challenge of parenting on their own. Like,
yeah, no doubt, man.
It's impossible.
No doubt. And I agree. I mean, you know, times have changed. Things have cost, 10 times more than they have in many areas, and some things surprisingly haven't changed. But, jumping right in, I reached out to connect and so grateful, again, making it out here. But you are, we're all a little bit of a work in progress. But what I love is you're sharing today is just how you're aligning sort of your gifts and abilities and skills and passions in this thing called real estate, more specifically in investing and really honing in on parts of that allow you to scale up without all the other needs that come with real estate. And so I think there's so many people that are just open to learning and growing and getting involved. And as we met, you were just kind of getting started around some of this, and we met in a very weird, unique, crazy cool way in a business venture you were involved in. Love Your Cookie.
Yeah. Love You Cookie.
Love You Cookie. I always say the your. It's like you. Love You
it's
Cookie.
Natural.
Yeah,
sure.
right on. Yeah, I get this random cookie delivered after I bought a property from my real estate agent. And I'm like, I didn't order this. Honey, did you order this? It has my name on it. I don't get it. And so I just called the number on the back, and I talked to one of the founders. And we get to talking, and I tell him I'm an e-commerce guy, or was an e-commerce guy at the time. And it's like, let's talk. Let's meet up. And so, like, first meeting, you were there, and we hit it off, talking about faith and business, and what you were up to. And at the time, you were just getting excited and gearing up for real estate, right? So this would have been when did you break through? Walk me through the timeline here, and college education wise too. How does that all kind of fit into this?
Yeah. And man, like, as time goes on, like, my memory, like, everything is like jumbled up almost. So
especially with COVID, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. So forgive me if some things are out of order. But the time that we had met,
about 3 years ago, 4 years ago.
It was about 2 or 3 years ago. I was working at a software company. So I was doing software sales at that time. And then also I was working with Sarah and the Love You Cookie team, and doing some operations and sales with them and whatnot. And Love You Cookie is dope. I always say, like, that's literally where I got an MBA. I have an MBA, but I don't know what I learned from, like, the actual computers.
Paying for it.
Paying for it, but actually working, being in it, seeing the problems that, Sarah and their team had to deal with, and making decisions and all that, like what comes with running a business, like that, like Love You Cookie gave me all of that. So that was really dope. And then it was, man, it was I think it was a God thing, honestly, because I'm constantly praying. I'm like, Lord, please bring, people around me that are, people I want to be like, that are, executing at a high level. Like bring those individuals around me. And then at the same time, I'm also like, I'm wanting, like, I'm getting into real estate, and, I have conceptual knowledge, and I'm taking some action. Like I'm action wise, like I'm, hitting the streets, knocking on doors, like doing the things people don't want to do. People are hanging up saying like,
100%.
Stop calling me. I don't want to sell my house. Like that, like I'm doing that stuff because I've learned that, like, if you do it long enough, you'll probably get a deal. I ain't got no deal yet, but I'm figuring it out. So, I'm praying that, like, God, please show me that my actions are, where they should be and aligned. And one of the things I wanted to do was the next kind of like opportunity. We had already bought a duplex, I think, at the time. And I wanted to, get some experience with like an actual like flip or something like that. Mm-hmm. And one of the strategies is, called a BRRRR, where you're buying it in cash and then you're fixing it up, and then you're rehabbing it, and then you're refinancing it and getting long-term money on it to keep it with, so that way you have little or no money into the deal. Right. So at the same time, I'm working with Love You Cookie, learning a lot of things and serving that way. We end up connecting with you, who by happenstance, catches the cookies, and I thought that was dope. I remember you pulling up on a motorcycle, and hopping off. So I thought that was pretty dope. I said, someday I'm definitely gonna have a motorcycle or something cool, pull up in a Batmobile or something.
Right.
But it was dope, and it was cool to I had never met anyone who had successfully like built a e-commerce business. That was a new thing. I loved the concept of it, the idea, but I had never been actually like shook somebody's hand who's done it at a high level. So I thought that was dope. But and then we connected and kind of like hearing a little bit about what you were doing and sharing about what I was doing. And then later on getting to do a deal was awesome. And my number one priority in that deal was like, I messed up pretty much everything in that deal. Like I paid too much for it. I hired the wrong guys for the rehab. So it was a huge, I call it learning tax.
Sure, for sure.
Which is a blessing, because you make that mistake once, you ain't making another
100%.
mistake like that again.
You got to pay the piper at some point.
Exactly. Yep. You got to pay that tax. But my number one priority was like, all right, let me get Josh back that money. And the deal, it worked out. It worked out great. Learned a lot. We did whatever we had to do to make it happen. And I still have that property.
That was your first deal.
That was my first. Yeah, that was my first like actual flip and burr and hold. That's kind of the only one I've burred and held.
Yeah, right. That was the time where I was just kind of looking to redeploy cash, mm-hmm. and I think I did it. Yeah, it was an individual direct deal with you. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Just happened to meet this dude. I'm like, he's down to earth. He knows he's aligned on his faith. He ain't gonna screw me. That's I tend to trust everyone, but especially when they have faith, I'm like, all right, he's gonna hustle. He's gonna make it work. So that's so cool to hear on this side of the camera and microphone, because you're helping or trying to make an impact in people's lives, and to hear someone share that you're able to make it work. Yeah. Thanks for paying the money back too.
For sure. Yeah, in this for sure. Yeah, no, it was because you also, like, with hard money or whatnot, like I had talked to tons of other people, you know, but they wouldn't lend to me specifically because they wanted to have like
track record, right?
Yeah, track record or like technical things of like you need to have an LLC, you can't keep it in your name. And I wanted to be able to do it so I could keep it in my name so that this was actually a house that as my wife was pregnant with JJ, we were going to live in for a bit. So it was like a live-in flip, I guess not technically, but like I think JJ was born maybe like a week or two after we moved in. Like it was
really?
like right, like
just in time.
Yeah, we had to.
Was
get
she
it
getting
done.
nervous? I mean, she's in third trimester at that point, going, "Where are we living?"
Oh,
I mean,
yeah. To say the least, my wife is amazing, but she was very upset, like how long things took, and honestly, everything was just me being kind of similar to you. Like I'm ultra like, I'm a little bit more of like, you know, this person's going to do right and do what they say and everything. And man, the contracts were drinking on the job and, you know, had friends over at the house or working at late hours. And I'm like, well, they said they'll get it done. So
right.
So, I mean, long story short, it was a learning lesson, but, yeah, my wife she was pregnant, but she was like, yo, like, this is what we're doing this weekend. Let's get these flooring. Let's get this, this paint done. And
we need a place for baby to go.
Yeah. She was like, get that closet fixed. And I definitely owe a lot to Laura for one being like, yo, we committed to it, so let's get it done.
Yeah, good for you. Well, you need our spouses for that.
Oh, 100%.
I have a mentor that sometimes said this: the Holy Spirit that often looks and sounds like my wife said to me,
like
right? Yeah. I mean, he uses all of us, right? And the way that affirmations are understood and spoken through other people sometimes that solidify where we believe he has us. And so we cannot discount our wives for that.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. Just on that note, man, honestly, like, I feel like, and I say this all the time, being married is a superpower. It is literally a superpower. Like the times where I've been, like, oh, I just messed up. Like I'm taking this huge risk or things aren't going my way, whatever the case. Who's there to pick you up? Like your wife is there to pick you up, remind you of like, to tell you what you need to hear. Like I really feel like God will like speak through, my wife. Even when I'm making decisions or trying to figure things out or in my head, like somehow my wife senses it. Like, you seem a little off today. I'm like, there's nothing I've done to indicate that, but she just knows.
It's incredible, like, right? That intuition, that sense.
Yeah.
It's funny you say this too, because brief story, I know a guy, he felt the Holy Spirit led him to say, you need to buy an airplane. And he's like, whoa. He took a season in his life where he spent an hour a day just walking on a gravel road talking with God. I was like, that's cool. And so he believed that this was revealed to him. Okay. And through two individuals, this came up in affirmation that it aligned with that. But the thing is, the third one was a pastor and one was someone else that was important in his life. But the third one was his wife. He came home and said, honey, I think I got to buy an airplane. She goes, I know. I talked to this and I had a dream or something. And I'm probably butchering all of it.
Sure, yeah.
But like when you hear that stuff, right? And I'm not sure what it's like, in your life, but give me a thought around the faithfulness of him delivering despite all circumstances, or looking back and saying, you were faithful then, you're going to be faithful now, right? And the more I see that happening, the more confidence I have. And really that's the confidence, that's the definition of faith. It's the confidence of what we hope for. And I'm going to just say that.
Yeah.
So how do you think about that? Obviously through your wife, but what have you seen and heard and felt and just experienced God working and using you in that way?
Yeah. So, right off the right off the bit, like what I can kind of think about is like even when I was kind of contemplating whether jumping all in with real estate, because before I had started, a journey of like real estate investing, I was doing software sales, and it was just, like kind of like you hear, it's just the 9 to 5 grind
Right.
of like you're just doing it. You're just like floating like a piece of paper through life or whatever.
Right.
And I know, like me personally, like I'm a go getter. Like I'm like, stick me on it. Like I'm there, and I'm gonna give like 200%. If it's between me and somebody else, it's gonna be me. If that's the goal.
Have you always been competitive?
I have.
Okay,
Yeah,
that helps.
I have. Yeah, 100%. But when I was like contemplating, like figuring out if I was going to, go full circle in real estate and be super intentional about it, I was just praying. No, I'm sorry. This was before I even like had the concept of real estate. I was just praying like, okay, Lord, like I know I'm meant for more. I know you can use me for more. Like what should I be doing? I'm just like, we just work. I just work. I go home, and then, we watch The Office sometimes, and like, I know there's more to it. Like, I know there's more to it. I can do more. Like, where can I add value in life and, serve you? And things would just pop up. Like a few people told me about Rich Dad Poor Dad. And then I ended up reading that. And I was like, oh, wait, okay. Like, you don't have to, before that, my concept and understanding was like, you work until you're 65 and then you retire. And if you put enough in your 401k, you'll have $1 million. And I was excited about that. The funny part is I was like, yo, I can have $1 million if I continue putting in my 401k. Like, this is amazing. But Rich Dad Poor Dad really like opened me up, gave me like exposure to, okay, there's different. You can do things different. People think different. Rich versus poor concepts, assets and liabilities, and all that good stuff. So that, God put that there to kind of give me some exposure. And then he put bigger pockets in front of my face, which is the same thing where a few people had mentioned it. And I'm like, what? And I didn't really like get into it. But after like the third or fourth person, just random people, it pops up in conversation. I started jumping into it and getting obsessed. I read the whole website, every single thing on there, like
just
obsessively.
Consuming the knowledge.
Yeah, because I was like, this is foreign and crazy to understand. And then the third thing that happened, a friend from high school, totally random. So this is after I had bought a book from Bigger Pockets, because I'm like, How to Invest in Real Estate was literally the book that I'm like reading. And like, as I'm reading it, friend from high school sends me a message. She's like, hey, this is super random. I had a dream that you were in real estate and you were going to, it was like sell a house or help us buy a house or do something with the house. I don't know. I just felt I should tell you that. And I was like, this can't be real. Like this is nuts.
Right.
This is wild.
Right.
And this is somebody I hadn't spoken to for like a long time. We were good people and it's all love, but there's like,
yeah, you didn't have an ongoing current relationship.
She would have no way to know. Like, I'm literally reading how to invest in real estate.
Right.
So I think that was like a very clear, like, okay, God is giving me the thumbs up and the go ahead to jump in to figure this out. So from there, I jumped in. I watched a webinar that was like 90 days to get your first property. 90 days later, we got our duplex. And then
was that the one? Is that what we funded a duplex? No, we found a flip. So you got a duplex. That was your first thing.
Yeah. That was like,
so that was on the BRRRR strategy where you're living in one side.
That was, they call house hacking or whatnot.
Okay. House hacking. That's right. Yeah.
We lived in the bottom unit and, the top unit, we rented out.
Cool.
So that was another where, a lot of learning tax on that one. And it not like we bought it wrong or anything like that, but more like things out of my control just happened.
Yeah.
water pipes are bursting. There's squirrels in the attic, and it costs, $3K plus to get them out. I ain't got no 3K. I'm turning into the squirrel catcher. Like that's how
you wear many hats.
You wear many hats. Yeah, today I'm the squirrel catcher.
Oh man.
And learning how to navigate a lot of things. So it was tough. It definitely didn't cash flow on that. Like it cash flowed on paper, but if you look at the losses I'm taking, it ain't cash flowing.
Yeah.
But the learning I got from that is, priceless.
100%. And it's good. I mean, along the way, you're seeing and hearing these things. And as I feel like the Lord draws us to this, and he wired us a way to be attracted to, the things we're naturally passionate about, and some of the giftings. And I think, people get misconstrued with this whole follow your heart, and I think, but if we align our heart in the place to be open to what God has for us, he's showing us where we should go. And the word, we talked about this briefly, but I think it's often misconstrued where we do float around in life wondering, when's the wind going to blow us here? And what's going to happen next with that? And so this year, last year, I don't know if you're like this too, but it's so stubborn, at 30, I'm almost 40 now, but I feel like I did the Josh thing for a long, long time. And God was very gracious along that journey to not screw up too many things. But I know there's a lot of things that he kept me from, for sure. But, the opening of the doors, and used to be a no-brainer. I would just run through it. The door's open, it must be. And that was the younger days. But the older I get, I'm more aware that every time a door opens and I run through it, there's tax that comes with that too. There's learning of time and learning of money. Yeah. And so learning to be obedient in where he has you right now and waiting on him, it's like he gave us this brain for a reason, And so when we start, even if we sometimes have all the facts, we can still make the wrong decision, right? But in that decision, then when it is the wrong one, the Lord's teaching us something, and sometimes we just got to ask, what is it you're teaching me here? Yeah. And then the magic is when you look back and realize what you learned and how his provision was there. Yeah. And you just didn't see it at the time. Yeah. Right?
Do you have an example of
that? Dude, this last year, since 2023, January, I'm going into the brand new year. I want to be a more intentional person that has habits around a routine in the morning. And so that was where I started. I wanted to lose some weight. So my time with Jesus was, routine, habits in the routine, losing some weight, developing a better relationship with my wife and kids, fixing some challenges I had with my mom, getting my mental health and emotional health in order. Like I came into December into January 23, whatever that is now, 16 months ago, with this plan, and it was great. But then first week, my brother quit a business that we had, and because my whole plan was to go off now and start doing deals and bringing on things, and then I'm distracted by this, saying, God, I thought this was the time to go become the version of myself you want me to be. Well, I had to learn this thing first, and this thing complemented all the stuff I was already on track to do. But it was reconciliation with my brother was not about just reconciliation. It was about the character of how we got there and the resentment that I learned through him that I was harboring for my former CEO. So through that experience, it pointed me to my own sin that I needed to reconcile. I'm in Las Vegas with my wife, which is a place that we had to overcome and conquer because that was one instance where infidelity occurred. So we're sitting in Las Vegas. Last time I'm in Las Vegas was with my wife as well. I saw my former CEO. He's walking. I'm speaking at a panel, and he is kind of walking around very interested because we hadn't talked. And next thing you know, I'd sold my business for 8 figures. And, I hadn't seen him for 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
And he's like, what? Wow. Congrats. What's next? And I didn't know, but I was currently working with my business partner, who was also a former employee of his. And so I was kind of just keeping on the down low. And I said, you know what? There's still a lot of people that don't know Jesus. For whatever reason, that statement stuck with him. Okay, fine, whatever. So he texted me, this next time I'm in Las Vegas. And so he said, hey, the last time we were in Las Vegas, you said there's still a lot of people that don't know Jesus. I'd love to connect and talk with you about that. And I'm like, he's been on my heart already because of my brother's situation. I'm in Las Vegas right now with my wife when I get this text and I'm reading it. And I'm like, it's funny, man, because you're on my list to talk to. Literally on my list. I had this list. 2 people were on the list for healing in my relationships. My mom and him. I'm like, let's put a date on the calendar. So we did. And I ended up having this amazing conversation. And he shared with me things that he had never shared with anyone about his faith in circumstances that he was navigating very significantly. And I won't go into details, but
sure.
I was like, God, you are so awesome. And the confidence that I had in the work he'd been doing in me was what he needed at the time and to hear. And he used me in that. And this guy was my older brother, senior brother, 7 years.
Yeah.
I knew he was a believer, but he was a leader in other areas that I wasn't, that I learned from. But this particular area, the roles were turned. So I saw this, I'm like, man. So this was a continuation of things, one after the other this year.
Yeah.
Well, I was then asked to speak at a Christian business men's group. And public speaking deal, 50, 60 people. I'm like, I have no idea what I'm going to talk about. And again, now you got me fired up because I could go down 7. This is literally like 23. It was like really cool. 7 of these things that started happening where God showed up and he's like, see what I was doing here? And so I learned, I'm like, I can't sit down and make my plans because they're not my plans. I mean, I can make my plans, but he'll laugh. But I need him to guide my steps.
Yeah.
And so, the word is a lamp unto my feet and a light unto my path. So the visual I have is like, we're just wandering. We know that death someday is the finish line. But like, if we just wait on him instead of running ahead, he's got just enough light to show our feet so we don't step in a hole.
Yeah.
Right. And he's got just enough light to show that the path is clear,
Nice, yeah.
So anyway, I could go into depth, but I've shared this story too many times. People like cut him off. Yeah, dude. So shifting gears though, I think that after kind of the success, or at least the tax of the wounds of doing a deal, doing your own, live in one, rent the other one out. And then, hey, I'm going to try a flip. We met, you did a flip. And that was now a couple years ago. You've kind of repositioned and said, all right, I understand that I like this real estate game, but I want to look internally at my gifts and skills. And so you began doing that. How did you make that decision, and where did you end up when it comes to what you're doing now? What kind of share with what that journey looked like?
Yeah, absolutely. So from like kind of after the duplex, actually, what happened is I'm like, all right, like I need to figure out how I can keep learning about real estate and keep growing and moving forward.
But make money doing it.
Right? Because I don't have money. I don't even have the skill set. And I don't have any deals. To do anything in real estate, like you either need a deal, like you need a property, you either need a skill set or you need the capital. You can just be an investor and
for sure
throw some money in real estate. But I had none of those. So I looked at like options wise, and this is before, I connected with you and did flip and everything, but options wise, what kept on kind of popping up, what made sense is what they called, wholesaling. which is pretty much, when it comes down to it, it's finding opportunities and finding properties to buy and either flip or sell or keep. So that is it is really like a hustle marketing and sales role. I had, my software sales job, I already do inside sales. Like, so
Smiling and dialing, was that?
Yeah, smiling and dialing, having conversations, talking to people. So that aspect kind of translated. And then at the same time, for me, and I kind of mentioned it to you, I always really look at things of like, okay, well, what skill set am I adding to the bag? Like, what can I learn?
Right.
Like, I love learning and growing. That stuff gets me excited, adding a new skill set or getting better at a skill set. And that was the best way for me to, talk to people and generate revenue from talking to people. You get to solve problems, very unique problems that nobody else wants to deal with. You get to come in and, find that solution for those, homeowners, and then, get paid in doing that. And then the skill set was like, you can identify what a deal is. Like there's so many properties and opportunities out there that people just walk past every day. You would have no idea it's opportunity, but if you're in it, you start to have that vision.
Yeah, you create that eye. Yeah.
Yeah, you that's the skill set. You get that eye. And one of my partners, Rashad, who, you've done a lot of business with and everything, like his skill set is amazing. Like one of my favorite things that he's done is he took this old furniture store that had been on the market for like 2-3 years. Nobody wanted it. Everybody, people who've been in the game for years have been like, oh, don't do that project. Like, that's terrible. He took that project, turned it into like 11 units or something to that nature, and, created $400,000 in equity. Got it for 150, put $1 million into it. It's worth like 1.5 or something like that.
Wow.
But having that goes, all that to say is like, that's a skill set you can build.
Yeah.
That's not I'm born doing this.
It's not a talent that's natural.
Yeah,
I mean, some of it could be, right? Some of what he innately has gives him an advantage in some ways, right? But to your point, it's about direction. It's about creativity and figuring it out, right? Being willing to go deeper, pull things apart. It's so cool to hear that story. I love that.
And it took me 7 months to get my first actual deal, and still didn't know what I was doing. So there was someone I had networked with who I had reached out to and said, hey, this is, not the cookie cutter situation. It literally was a situation, which is kind of a cool story. It was me knocking on doors. And
like literally, not calling.
No, not calling. This is me knocking in my neighborhood. Hey, my name is Jordan. I'm your neighbor. If you have any neighborly things, feel free to reach out. I'm happy to do what I can for you. Also, my wife and I were looking to buy some property in the area. So I was doing that, and I knocked on one door, which was like on my way back of like all these houses I hit one day. And old lady was talking to me through the door, and she was like, I couldn't really see. I could see maybe like a little bit of her gray hair or something through the door. And I had slid her my card, and I was like, hey, if you need anything, feel free to reach out. And she was like, okay, sounds good. But she had called me like 2 days later and was like, hey, I physically can't get my garbage out. Like I can't bring it out. And she really couldn't. I forgot how old she was. I think she was like 90 or
Was this
something.
a newer thing that happened to her, or she was struggling with this in general?
I think she had been struggling with it because she was old. Like this wasn't a new condition. Like she just fell. It was
so she called to ask you to do that for her.
Yeah. So she had called me and said, hey, like, can you help me with this? And I was like, yeah, absolutely. Like, I'm your
Right.
neighbor. So that turned into 6 a.m. Wednesdays and Sundays. I would take her garbage from her porch to her garbage can, and then I'd put it out for garbage day too. But that was consistently, and then get this, it was for like 7 months. Wow. But over that time,
How far away was it, by the way?
well, it was actually, the nice part is she was like 4 houses down.
Okay.
Which was nice. And we honestly, we built a relationship,
Yeah,
a
of
friendship
course.
over that time. Cause she was, man, especially nowadays, like people are lonely.
Oh, totally.
Like it's a real thing that like older people will die quicker, just cause they're isolated. But long story short, we had great conversations. She was a character, and we even had her over the house sometimes. But she lived in this monster of a duplex, and she lived in the living room, and like all the stories and stuff you hear about, like the hoarder house that's got mice in it and water damage and just all types of like nasty stuff. Like one time I'm talking to her and a rat runs out there.
No.
Like as we're speaking.
So she had, that was her setup?
That was her situation, which the reality was like, I'm like, oh, like you should not be living like this. But she loves her home. I also realized like people love their property, even if it's like, this is very like unrealistic and you shouldn't be living in these conditions. Like, it's not even about that for them. It's what they know and what they love. So she loved her house, even though she was sleeping in the living room and it was filled with magazines, books, and all types of smells. And there was a lot going on. But long story short, what ended up happening is she knew at some point she needed to sell because she owed the city a ton of money. She also, she was too old to be living in there. Where she couldn't get her garbage out, but she couldn't do like basic things, like pipes were bursting in the house. She couldn't maintain the house. Like it was just a bad situation, but she loved her house. So she waited out as long as she could. And then she ended up taking a fall outside of her house in the winter.
Oh no.
And then she had to go to a home. And then from there she was like, okay, like I have to sell it. And then, so what ended up happening is I had networked with and her house was very unique, in our neighborhood. So I didn't really know what it was worth. But I connected with a friend who, or another investor, who I reached out, came with me, to, walk it and everything. And we were able to give her, honestly, like more than anybody else could have given her, especially like
with the shape speed, that it was in. The speed.
The speed and the shape that it was in and everything. So it turned out to be like a great deal. And I learned a lot about real estate just in the transaction of like, I made, $10K for finding the deal. The person who, bought it, they made $100K from flipping the deal.
Wow.
So their skill set made them 100. My skill set made me like 10.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it was a good learning lesson, and it was cool to kind of be able to help out.
Well, the impact again,
well.
like you're just being neighborly, and what we're called to do anyway, right? And not often does that translate to dollars, and that's okay. And it may not have ever. It could have very well just, you could have moved before that happened, but holy cow. But again, back to your skill set, right? Like, just being personable, loving people, meeting where they are, having frankly the balls to just go door knock, because that's, we were talking about that earlier, that going door to door isn't even like, a thing that people get very excited about anymore.
Not the fun
if you're on the other side of the door, So crazy, man. So what's the vision long term?
So bigger picture. wise, is, I got in the skill set of finding opportunities essentially. And what I'd like to do with that, in big picture overall, is I really want to build a strong one, like, ecosystem of friends, family who are investing in building portfolio and assets and using their skill sets. But we're all able to, acquire and build and also build out the lifestyles that we all want to have. And doing that through real estate,
Yeah.
I think, is the most realistic. And then, making giving a priority in that as well. So that's like big picture conceptually. More in like the technical aspects is I really like development and learning development. That's also a space where, there's not a lot of Black people in. So I think that's a space where I would love to be or learn to be a leader in, and learn to or learn the skill and then be able to coach and mentor and show others how to do the same.
For sure.
And build a portfolio and everything too. So that's kind of like big picture. I guess there can be some more technicalities and it may change and whatnot, but I believe that's where God will lead me right now. He could show me different, and we could be in a different space in 2 years. But
do you find that you're able to uncover more deals than there are people to buy them right now, or is it pretty much one at a time? If you find one, you're going to make sure you turn around and get it moving. I'm guessing that's probably the case, because having to find them is the hardest part.
Yeah.
Where's the mix right now? Because I know you're not the only one doing it, right?
Yeah.
You have competition out there.
Yeah. A lot of competition. Like I said, anybody, you don't even have to have money. You can just, your neighbor, like I said,
Right.
like my situation, I knocked on a door, which is, everybody knows somebody who, wants to sell a house or whatnot. But I say all that to say is, like, on my end, I'm spending money on marketing, and then from that marketing, I'm getting a certain amount of leads. From those leads, I'm going to close a certain amount of deals. So that's the ideal science of what, and from that you can, like, build a portfolio. Right. You can make it straight transactional, but the more, that's when it comes down to it, the more problems you're able to solve, the more money you're going to make, essentially.
Yep.
And to, I guess your question was, like, are you finding more deals than others? Is that
yeah, I'm just curious how, because it's matchmaking, right? Like, you have to, you could be finding lots of deals, but they're not the right deals for people, and so therefore, you could have more deals than you have money. Sometimes you're probably going, you have more investors that want to invest than potentially you have deals. It can, it can go both ways. But what's the season you're in now with that?
Yeah, absolutely. So, what I like to do is I like to build relationships with investors and individuals and get an idea of, like, what they're looking for, and I just look in that area. So that way I know I have a really strong relationship that can execute on something that I find. And then also I'm always thinking more in a sense of, like, I don't, the exit strategy of wholesaling, like, is great transactionally.
Right.
But it's not the end
It's
game
income.
for me.
It's not equity.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Equity is the game I want to play.
Yeah.
I've just, as far as, like, seasons in life, as I mentioned, I'm all about the skill set. So I figure it's very, or it's important for me right now to be disciplined and learn how to make consistent money in real estate. Because I can go out and buy a deal now, but how do you get to, like, 3 to 4 deals? How do you get to, like, 10 deals?
Right.
So I want to get to a space to where I have a consistent machine going in a skill set that I can always rely on. And then from there, I can say, okay, I know that I can make a certain amount of money in a year, and I can scale this up by replacing me here, in the dispositions aspect or the acquisitions aspect. Or I can just turn this machine into like straight, we buy single families, and I can build a portfolio of single families or commercial, or say, okay, let's transition this into talking to business owners,
right,
or whatever the case.
Right.
Like it's all the same thing, but the point for me right now in season wise is, God is telling me like, be patient, be disciplined, be consistent, and go from there. So it's been a challenge, I would say. Like I'm speaking very conceptually right now, but it's for sure like the hardest thing for me in front of my face right now.
Yeah, and to learn the difference between honing in a skill and being right where you need to be, but also flip side of that, not turning off opportunities that are not perfectly in the mold, but knowing when and where to find that exception to the rule. Because if everything's the exception to the rule, nothing's the rule.
Yeah.
And I'm with you, because my mind is like that too. I see a lot of opportunities, and I see problems too, right? And so everyday living, I'm thinking about an app to solve that, or a product to solve that, or a business model to solve that, and something that could be scaled or more efficient. And it's annoying sometimes for my wife. I had to make sure I say that, because she's like, why don't you? Don't you have conversations all day with guys? Don't you get that out of your system? I was like, well, I do, but you won't believe this conversation I had today. So a lot of the times so many cool just stories, and not only in just opportunities, but just how God is connecting dots through conversations. And, it's a good reminder for me, even like to be thinking about, it's so easy to do life and business transactionally. Right. Yeah. But like, if you do it genuinely and getting to the depths of someone and their interests and their passions and their skills and their network and who they are and where they want to go, isn't the life then really much more fulfilling when you start to see opportunities and you're able to connect people with those opportunities? And it happens. Like, I know a guy, or I know this. And then people start asking you, because you've done it once before, and you're like, well, actually, I do have a guy, and let me make that introduction, So
100%.
You never know how it's going to be used. But the reality is there's always a lot going on up here, and that doesn't always translate to words on a phone. That's why, tools like audio transcription or Chat GPT, like what we started doing now is like meetings with my wife and I and other students, about our kid as a student for the school they're at, conferences or whatnot. We just hit record on the audio phone, and I use an app that brings a transcription in and an audio file. But then I just take that transcript, and Chat GPT gives me a nice summary, and it's like I wouldn't have been able to take enough notes to capture that, and so part of what I love is just these conversations is I have all this information it's not in the ether now. It's it's information on a sheet, that can be used to be mined. So I've used that now. I got on this tangent now, but to take some of the first 8 podcasts that I have, and I was trying to understand what are the themes of what I'm talking about, what are people saying? And, oh yeah, sure enough, here's the list of them. And, and then you take that and say, how does this align with what men are dealing with right now? And based on its ability to learn and bring that information back, I start to hone in on, the overlaps and the gaps.
Yeah.
And so I think at the end of the day, it's just about being resourceful, resourceful with our time, resourceful with our intentions, resourceful with, our relationships. And I think the biggest struggle is we don't have a formal, people individually don't have a formal way of building relationships. It's like this for me and my wife. Hey, do we want to have this couple over? No. because she's introverted.
Yeah.
Okay, so that means I'm on my own on that. How am I intentional about staying in touch? And so that's how I need to be fed.
Yeah.
And so I needed to create a system around that. And so now part of my routines include just who do I know that I need to be talking to? And, that's a lot in itself, right? Just like you're talking about, you got people in your board that you're moving across. But that's why I asked about CRM, because there's a gap called a PRM, like a personal relationship manager.
Oh yeah.
Who's who?
Yeah.
What do they know? What do they do? What are their goals? And so that's what I want to build in this ecosystem we were talking about.
Yeah. That's I love that. I feel like Ryan Holiday's spoken about that concept, or somebody.
Oh, really?
I've heard of somebody talk about like a CRM. They have a CRM for their relationships.
Yeah.
And that's actually something that I've looked for as well. Are you saying like you have built out the concept already, or is this something like you're working on?
I have a couple things moving in motion that are 2 quotes, from developers to build out kind of version 1.
Yeah.
But again, waiting on the Lord is like, these guys are in my network and they've come to me through, it's just unbelievable. But then next thing I know, I'm talking to a Christian Indian guy.
Oh, cool.
To help me with some social media. All of a sudden tells me about this project he's been working on for 6 years. And we're what he's doing with me is a means to fund this. And this is an app that's very similar in what I'm trying to build, but on the front end of that, I'm more on the back end. So his thing is about identifying the relationships and finding ways to grow into new relationship. Mine is about managing on the back end. And so, these are the things that continuously happen in my life as I just wait and be open and be genuine and share. He shares this with me. First thing I said is, how do you become a Christian in India? And he started with his testimony. Yeah. So I'm like, this guy's the real deal. And so then we went off on this tangent. And he showed me, I'm like, you got it. I mean, I literally threw my hat down. I'm like, God, you have to be kidding me right now.
Yeah.
Same thing happened with the first guy. He bought this application, and it's primarily for this purpose. But he said, I hope to get this going, but this thing has the ability to do other applications. I'm like what? He's like, well, like a CRM. I'm like, what did you just say? The thing you bought with a few changes has the ability to be what I'm talking about. It's like, yeah. And so, and then in the meantime, a friend of mine came over and was telling me his challenge with how to stay connected with some of the friends in his life. And so he went and built a quick app, super simple for the iPhone, to be able to just simply remind himself to reach out to so-and-so. And so every day he's just got 2 or 3 or 4 people on his list to call.
Yeah.
And he built it for his own needs, but now he's out there talking about it. And so the life of an entrepreneur is a double-edged sword.
Yeah.
You can't shut it off, which means you can really get unfocused. Just like we did right here. I just hijacked that whole thing.
Yeah.
But dude, as I shared, we could go all day with this, and I think I just always enjoy having a conversation with a dude who's working through the challenges in life, learning about how he's uniquely wired and gifted and positioned to make an impact in people right in front of him. So congrats on the 2 kids and the building of what you have, and the vision for it sounds incredible. So excited to see where that ends up. And don't forget about me over here as you start building things out. Send me some deals. I'd love to see them.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
But I'm going to close with thank you, and we will catch you on the next time.